Welcome to the Learning Reinvented Podcast, brought to you by myself, James Poletyllo, and the team at The Learning Effect. There are lots of learning podcasts out there, so we wanted to do something slightly different. This week, we're talking to someone who's taken the skills they learn in corporate learning and development and use these to focus on a very different challenge. I'm delighted to welcome Betina Skovsted to the podcast. Thank you for joining us, Betina. Do you want to introduce yourself and tell the listeners a little bit about yourself and the journey you're on?
Yeah, thanks, James. Thank you so much for having me, and well done on my surname. It's not an easy one. My learning and development journey started quite late in life, actually, if you look at it. But actually, when I look back, it probably started a lot earlier, really. But I guess my journey up until now, I do hate the word journey, though. I just really want to actually throw up a little bit. And then I was thinking, actually, what can I use instead? And I was talking a path to a fulfilled life, but that's also quite yucky. So I'm just going to go with journey. Grew up in Denmark, therefore my difficult surname. And that was actually when I first started working in hospitality and service, and which sort of was the foundation of where I am today as well. I actually came to London to go to university. I did an international tourism degree. It's taken me a little while. I'd taken a bit of time out before I decided what to study at university, and I chose tourism because I didn't want to sit in an office for the rest of my life. That was really and also just because I love traveling. But straight after finishing my degree, I went straight into an office, into doing some marketing, project management, which was an incredible learning curve for me, just being in an office, also in the UK, in London, fast-paced. And I learned an incredible amount of things in the 9 years that I was there. But after a while, I was like, okay, no, I feel like I'm not learning anything anymore. So I took a year out and really reflected on what I wanted to do. I think it's really hard to decide, what you want to do. It's always really easy to see what you don't want, but, actually getting to what you want it took a whole year for me. But I ended up doing a CIPD certificate. And then was lucky enough for one of my old clients to phone me up and invite me to do her maternity cover at Intercontinental Hotels Group, which is also where I worked when we met each other, James. That's where I sort of did some leadership development work for general managers of hotels around the world. We did like a central onboarding program for the GMs there. And I spent 7 years there. And actually, then all of a sudden I realized, 17 years have gone by. I'm in corporate world sitting in an office. Is this my life? So actually, I took the leap in 2018, sold my house, quit my job, and moved to Tanzania, where I am now working as a self-employed hospitality training consultant, coach. A lot of hats for the hospitality industry there in Tanzania.
I think it's really interesting because, like you said, not many people or some people I certainly resonate with not knowing really what I want to do. And I've always said I don't really know what I want to do when I grow up, and I still haven't grown up, and I've just sort of fallen into lots of things. Yeah. And you said there sort of you didn't want to go into an office, but sort of as things happen, you then spend 17 years in the office, and you're then at that stage where you've maybe gone back to that love of travel and doing other things. So what was it that sort of spurred you to really make that move in 2018 and take that leap that maybe lots of our listeners are thinking, I'd love to do something like that, but I'm scared, or I don't want to do it. So what led you to that point?
Yeah, it was quite scary, and actually it took a while. I think it sort of kicked off already back in I guess, 2014, I'd had some big changes to my personal life in terms of a long-term relationship ending. And with that was sort of my future plans. We'd been together for almost 10 years. And so my future plans were all of a sudden, oh, I don't know what to do now. So I actually got a life coach, and it was the best decision I've ever made. Absolutely. I never really had thought about it. I'd never heard of anybody having a life coach. And it was just, I felt I needed some help to really guide me and to do my self-discovery. And since I am a procrastinator, it took me from 2014 to 2018 to actually do something about it. I'm an incredible procrastinator and planner, and I call myself risk averse, which people, don't really believe when I tell them what I do. But I think that's why it took so long. And, that relationship with my life coach really, gave me the opportunity to find or define my purpose, I guess, to really define why am I on this earth? What am I actually here for? And how could I live in a way that makes me happy? And that's when I started reflecting on how I ended up doing the work that I was doing in learning and development, and really realizing that was my purpose. That had to be more than. And I reflected back on just when I was 10, 11, and I was sitting there at the table, at the kitchen table, looking at my dad was a teacher. And he was marking like essays and tests or whatever. And I found it incredibly intriguing. And I was all like, I'm going to be a teacher. I wanted to be a teacher already from when I was not even a teenager yet. Then actually, when I became sort of an older teenager, I started coaching little kids in badminton, and realized that I have absolutely zero patience with kids. So I sort of said, okay, yeah, no, I'm not going to be a teacher. But obviously I've come full circle, and I have become a teacher just for adults instead. But I think that is when you really understand your values and purposes, when it's something that has always been within you the whole time, ever since you were, little. So, yeah, I guess that's what sparked it.
I think it's really interesting you've gone back to that value and purpose, and sometimes those things, even if we don't have a plan, I think we get drawn to the things that are innate in us and that make us happy and give us passion and energy. You made that, from 2014 to 18, you finally made that big leap. So what is it you're doing in Tanzania?
Yeah, it's a mixed bag. I went there with nothing. I had no work, no leads, no nothing. I had actually spent some time in Tanzania in 2016 and 17. I'd taken a 6-month sabbatical at that time from IHG, and traveled around Africa, as part of my self-discovery journey. Oh, there it was again. So I obviously knew a few people there. I knew the culture, but I had no business leads, and I was going there with, a plan of such and a goal of such, like a bit of a dream, I guess. There was not so much of a plan, it just turned out that I've been lucky to meet some really inspirational people there who have embraced the same kind of thing that I want. So I've been working with, luxury lodges, which I still do actually. It's a 3 years in now in the work that I've been doing for these luxury lodges in the Serengeti, and working with their middle management, so the Tanzanian talent, to elevate them to senior management, which takes time. Most senior managers in the hospitality industry in Tanzania are expats, and what I wanted to try and achieve together with others is to get more of the Tanzanian talent to be able to run these establishments, so they'll be less dependent on expat influence and involvement. So that's part of what I do. I also work with smaller hotels, Tanzanian owned, which is very important to me, that I try and help the the establishments who are not actually owned by Tanzanians. And I do a lot of, it's not really free work, because they do actually give me a room and some food and some wine. Yeah, otherwise it is free, you know, sort of a mutual benefit of me helping them with some training, some consultancy, and it's incredibly rewarding. In 2019, I also did some teaching in Zanzibar. It's for an NGO, so that was total volunteer work, which was really interesting, taking young people who had no real education and trying to get them into hospitality. That was really starting from scratch. You know, they'd never seen a champagne glass before, didn't know that wine was made from grapes, and had, you know, never used cutlery themselves. So, you know, that was back to basics, which was also really an interesting project. So yeah, it's a bit of a mixed bag. And I'm actually, heading there in 3 weeks back to Tanzania. I've had a bit of a break here in Europe, but I'm looking forward to starting a new contract out there in Zanzibar for a beautiful hotel out there for some heads of departments training. So that's my next little project.
Well, it sounds like a, you know, really nice mixed bag, some sort of pro bono work, a bit of barter so that you can get some wine and shelter for some of your work, and then some obviously paid work along the way.
Yeah.
You mentioned earlier on that you hadn't really learned, or, you know, sort of stopped learning in your corporate career. So what have you learned in your time in Tanzania and working in that environment?
Yeah, wow, it is an incredible learning. Actually, I should call it my learning journey. That's what I should call it. It has been an incredible learning curve, actually, for me. You know, it's also because of the people that I meet. You know, there are some really, whether they are Tanzanians or expats, you know, when you're around on your travels, you meet some incredibly interesting people. So basically, you know, working, yes, of course, learning through my work, but also really learning through the people that I meet. You know, it's incredibly inspiring people. But I think my biggest learning probably have been around the culture. You know, that's an ever giving learning curve, because it's such a very, very different culture to my own, and you know, really the difference that it makes when you have to have a relationship, a teacher-student relationship of sorts, with someone from another culture. It's very different.
So you're going back in 3 weeks to Zanzibar. You've got your next project lined up. So tell us a bit about that, what you'll be working on.
Well, yes, it is still in the planning stages. You know, nothing gets done if it's not last minute. But it's I think there's, so I'm not sure of the numbers yet, between 18 and 25 people, heads of departments there in the hotel, who, we're going to be doing some different workshops on management skills, leadership skills, emotional intelligence. And there's a mixture there of expats and Tanzanians that I'll be working with, which is also going to be really interesting, because you're going to have different cultures as well in one classroom. So that will be a new challenge for me, but also a very exciting one. So yeah, we'll be doing those workshops, and I'll be doing observations and feedback with them as well. You know, helping them also to work on their succession plan, which is something that is lacking a little bit in the Tanzanian sort of HR world. Actually, in Tanzania, if you go in and do an HR or anything to do with human resources education, there is never any learning and development included, really. So a lot of the HR professionals that are there don't have any, you know, facilitation skills, learning needs analysis skills, nothing like that. So, and have certainly never heard of a succession plan. So those are some of the things that I really do work very hard on with the properties there, to try and get a bit more of a structure in terms of their learning and development, and you know, the talent that they've got.
With some of your clients, you've built a long relationship. So you've been working with them 3+ years. You've been helping those students develop. What have you seen in terms of growth and change in them and those approaches? Like you said, you're starting maybe from a very low base level, but you know, where are you getting to, and where are you seeing that sort of growth with those more established clients?
Yeah, I guess where I've spent most of my time was in those luxury lodges and in the Serengeti since the beginning of 2019. And I've been in and out there, in and out of the bush, as I say. And yeah, so I've spent between 4 and 6 months each year working with, now it's 14 individuals that I'm working with on a very intense basis. And, you know, when I first started working with them, hardly any of them were even doing a to-do list. You know, their organizational skills, prioritization was something that they were not, you know, not really familiar with. They could do service, that is no problem. Service is sort of, I think, ingrained in the Tanzanian culture. They're incredibly friendly and courteous people, and you know, so that sort of comes naturally to them. But it was all the stuff behind the scenes, as you know, you say, really, the people management stuff, the project management, all of that, you know, admin-y stuff. They don't learn it when they go and study tourism, for example, or hospitality. And I have seen an incredible growth in those areas, emotional intelligence as well. And I guess, you know, this year has been an incredible success for them. And for me, you know, obviously their success is my success. Yeah, 8 out of the 14 people that I have been promoted this year, which I am super proud of them. They have put in so much work. They have allowed me to really, really push them hard, push them out of their comfort zones. I think push them to a place that they didn't even believe they could get to. And they have allowed me to do that with incredible care and trusted me to, that even when I was tough with them, it was for their own good. So yeah, and actually one of them is taking over an expat role, which obviously is the ultimate goal. So I'm super happy. Yeah.
So it sounds like you're starting to see the fruition of your endeavors, and you're starting to see that, you know, that ability to elevate and free up that talent to be able to deliver, you know, reach their potential, all the other jargonistic things we could say that we talk about in learning and development. If you go back to thinking when you were in those office roles in London, working across the world, and now you're, you know, in a very different world with more, you know, portfolio career, you've got a bit of a plan for what you're doing in 3 weeks, you're going out to do something very different. Are you closer to fulfilling that purpose and feeling happier in what you do?
Oh, that's a tough question. I feel I do. Yeah, I definitely am closer. I'm not close enough, I guess, if I have to be quite critical. Actually, I had a life coaching session this morning. You know, good coaches still have coaches as well. And he actually also asked me, you know, where do you feel you are in terms of where you want to be, you know, because you had frustrations along the way, for sure. And, you know, working in Africa is not a straightforward career either. But I do feel I've still got a way to go. I feel like I am definitely, you know, being able to live within my values and within my purpose. Probably not to the extent that I would like to yet. But I think that's probably because my client base is quite small still. You know, there is only me. So, you know, it's hard to really expand a business. You know, I'd have to spend time on finding the right people, and I would certainly only hire Tanzanians as well. So, you know, that makes it even tougher. Mm-hmm. So I think, you know, on a small scale, I'm doing what I want to do. I have some other dreams, obviously bigger dreams that I want to get to. You know, the same dreams that I had when I left London in 2018. You know, that was a 3-year plan, which is now 3 years, and I'm probably still in my first year of that 3-year plan. So I'm just going to have to make it a 10-year plan, maybe, I don't know. Yeah, things just go a little bit slower than I had envisaged, I guess. But I'm not unhappy with the progress that I've made. But yeah, hoping that I can speed things up a little bit over the next few years.
I can imagine that, the last year and a half and COVID and the pandemic has put a bit of a dent in some of those plans, and tourism and hospitality across the world have suffered. So how's that been in Tanzania?
Oh, well, yeah. Actually, I don't think it has hurt me as a business as such, apart from I had a couple of smaller contracts that I had to cancel. But my big contract there in the bush, I kept, and I actually got to isolate there, which was quite amazing. So back in 2020, so yeah, that was last year, I was actually meant to go back to Denmark for Easter to have time with my family. But I had to make a decision at the time because, that was obviously when everything was just happening in Europe, and in Tanzania, everything was quite quiet still. And I decided to stay. They were incredibly kind to me and let me stay there. Obviously, they didn't pay me anything, but I got to stay there. And it was because it was in the bush, they were able to actually close it into a bubble, and there were no people in or out. And so they closed everything down, and I got to isolate in a beautiful game reserve, playing tennis, swimming in the swimming pools for guests because there was no guests, going on game drives to see the migration for the Great Migration for the very first time. And I actually felt incredibly guilty when I was talking to my friends back in Europe who were just stuck in, like you, James, as well, stuck in a flat in London. And I was feeling poor. I was feeling quite guilty, but incredibly lucky as well. So, but now I think only now really the Tanzania, of course, there hasn't been any tourists as such. So it has caused some upset there in terms of the industry, of course, but it feels like they're coming back, also where I've been working, they've been hiring new people, and the amount of talent that is out there at the moment now, which is a great time to hire some of the talent that have been let go from other places, and but obviously not as many jobs to go around for that talent. So yeah, it has obviously caused some upset there, but also some good opportunities for people. So there's always a silver lining, I find.
Yeah, and I think you have to work through whatever the challenges are, and with you going in, embarking in a new culture, learning new things, meeting new people, finding your place, and all of those things, you're trying to work your way through that, as is everyone else trying to work their way through whatever comes next that we all face.
Yeah, no, absolutely, and it's a struggle for some people, but I do feel like I have had the opportunity to still continue on what I was doing, even if it's slower.
I'm sure some of the people listening to this will be, thinking, that's an amazing story. I'd love to do that. I'd love to, go to wherever in the world it is that connects with me, where, I'd love to start a new life or a new existence. And there will be other people thinking, oh my God, that's far too scary. I couldn't do anything like that as well. And then there'll be other people as well who are, maybe working in global roles or working with people across the world who maybe haven't had that opportunity as you have to maybe immerse yourself in a different culture, or people who are going shortly out to work in different cultures. So what would be your tips and lessons you've learned about actually working with people who have very different backgrounds, come from different cultures, different value sets, and how could people learn some of the lessons that you've been through?
First of all, just to your first part of what you were saying, I do get a lot of people say to me, oh, wow, I wish I could do that, but of course I can't. And I'm like, why not? A lot of people tell me, oh, you've been incredibly brave. Oh, it takes such courage. And of course, it does. But if that is really what you want to do, it's not. There are risks with every decision that you take, but if that is really what you want to do, I do encourage people to try and find their purpose and go for it, even if it is a little scary. My life coach at the time actually told me, if your dreams don't scare you, then you're not dreaming big enough. So that is my little wise words that I'm passing on to other people. But that was the beginning of it. In terms of lessons learned around culture, I'm still learning on that. I would say that it takes time, especially when the culture is this different. Yes, of course, when I went from Denmark to the UK, there was also a culture difference that I had to get used to, not in a work sense, but in a personal sense. And but I guess the difference isn't huge compared to Europe and Africa. And I think one of the things that surprised me the most at the time was how much the dynamics between black and white is very much like it was in colonial times, I imagine. It was one of the things that I really had to get used to in the beginning. It was actually when I was traveling in Uganda, I realized that, they see me as someone who's better than them because I'm white. And that was quite a big shock for me, because I absolutely didn't want them to see me like that. I was, standing in a queue for the cash machine. Yes, they have cash machines in Uganda. It was a long queue. I didn't realize on Mondays that everybody would get their whatever payment they get. And so anyway, there was a long queue and I was standing there, and the security guard that was standing at the cash machine, came to me and said, okay, you can go to the front of the queue. And I was horrified, and I was like, absolutely not. And they said, oh, but you're busy. And I said, I'm no busier than anybody else, and I'm no more important than anybody else. And it was actually a real eye-opener for me, and trying to navigate that kind of belief has been difficult. It's still there. And I still get stared at, and all of a sudden becoming the minority has been an interesting journey to be on, because obviously total opposite to how it's been for me living in Europe. So yeah, time. It takes time. That is my first lesson, and I'm still getting through it. In terms of learning and development, as a facilitator or a teacher or a coach, I just think that the most important thing is to really understand their culture, understand the lives of the students that you have. If you cannot relate to or empathize with their situations, you're not able to give them examples that that they can relate to when you're trying to teach them about emotional intelligence, for example, or to teach them about fairness, or there's so many things that I would use an example. I used to, before I started university, I was working in Disneyland Paris. And I didn't realize that. I just used it as an example once, and they were like, huh, what's that? They'd never even heard of Disney. So you really have to adapt to very different, examples that is relatable to the different culture. And also with your instructions, when you're giving instructions, I found that was really challenging. I was not, in the beginning, I just wasn't able to get through what I wanted them to do. And I actually started using visuals a lot more, because that seemed to resonate better than my words. And of course, you have to adapt your language a little bit. I don't stop using difficult words. I just explain them, because I feel like they should still learn the difficult words, because their English is great already. So yeah, I guess those are the biggest learnings. Oh, there was a funny story actually. I was giving examples. We were doing a little activity about strategic and operational tasks. And so I wanted them to say, okay, you have to write down all your tasks that you do in a day. All right, one task per Post-it note. And then they started writing, they were in groups, they started writing, and they were writing all of their tasks on one Post-it note. And I was like, no, one task, one Post-it note. And then, it took forever and I actually had to show them in the end. And it wasn't until that evening when I was sitting with a couple of the students having dinner, and I asked them, what was the problem? What was I doing wrong? And that's when I realized that Post-it notes are incredibly expensive. And they thought it was an absolute waste of money and Post-it notes to just write one task when you could actually have 10 tasks on one Post-it note. So yeah, just those kind of things really triggers how you need to be mindful of them living a very, very different life. Yeah.
I think it's been able to connect with people on value set and, life experience, as you said, and that's not something you can pick up in a book or by reading from afar, but you're immersing and, again, it's engaging with people and having that time, as you said in that anecdote, to be able to sit down with people and unpick why that was a challenge, and therefore you're able to understand it. Because quite often we just see the presenting issue, don't we? I'm saying something, they're not getting it, they're not following, but we don't get down to that level of really understanding where that connection is missing or what we need to change or adapt.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's so true. And I've had so many self-doubt moments when I was thinking, oh, geez, I can't do this. I'm obviously not capable, but actually, taking that time. And I think, I also, when I wasn't teaching or when, and I traveled around Tanzania and actually, I don't seek out expats. I seek out Tanzanians to connect with, to get ideas from, and that has really helped me really immerse myself in the culture. And they see that. My Swahili is still iffy, so that's still something I'm working on. But they do see that, I think it's also building that trust, because you are an outsider coming into, a group of Tanzanians, and you see you in a certain way, and for them to trust me. And I think that is probably my biggest success, when I feel that I get that trust, that they genuinely trust that I'm there for them, that I care about them and their development. I'm not just doing this to earn money. I'm not just doing this to, further myself. I really create an involved team spirit, that we're all in it together, and that, when they are learning, I'm learning. I often say to them, I'm learning just as much as them, but just different stuff, So, but I think that's the trust part. It takes time, and I think it's important to get that, because otherwise you're not going to get enough out of the group, especially not me as a white person standing there in front of white European, even, standing in front of a room where they sort of see that whatever I say is law, in the way that they did that in the beginning, saying, oh, it doesn't matter what I say. Now they actually have the courage to challenge me, saying, hey, actually, no, that's not the way it should be. And they tell me off, and they, and it's just become a really, amazing partnership I have with this group of people. And I'm looking forward to repeating that in other companies as well.
I think that, there's some really valuable lessons from that. I love travel myself because I think it pushes you, it tests your own value set, it tests what you think, how you perceive things, how you're perceived. But I think you can take that lesson even outside travel, that if you go into any new situation, you're coming with a perceived agenda, you're coming with whatever baggage, and that may not be related to you, but how other people see you. And I think that building trust and taking the time to understand and connect with people is where you really make sustainable change, whether that's in learning, leadership, working in a team, whatever that happens to be. But I think you have to take that time, you have to put that time in, and you need to be able to create those moments of conversation and connection where you can challenge, you can explain, you can question each other openly, you can reflect back your views and opinions. And again, as you'll have seen in that sort of culture where you are, where there is a disproportionate power balance perceived initially, that will take some work. So I think, you know, that time must be amazing to have that quality of time to be able to build those relationships as well and get to that level.
Yeah, taking the time to build that trust and connection is definitely something that I would always want to do, and that also why I don't take engagements that are like 2-day workshops here and there. It doesn't work. You know, I think from us, you know, from a learning and development standpoint, we know that it doesn't, you know, formal learning is great when it's part of a package of a blended learning approach, you know, whether it's 70-20-10 that you believe in, all that kind of stuff. But I think that it is, for me, the longer engagements are the most powerful. And that's how I've built my business.
Betina, I think, you know, it's lovely to catch up. Thank you very much for joining us on the podcast. I'm sure there'll be lots of people who will be listening in and fascinated to hear what's going to happen next and the rest of what you're going to be working on. So how can people best follow you or connect with you?
Probably the easiest is to find me on LinkedIn.
What we'll do is make sure that your LinkedIn connection is in the show notes below, and also as you develop your business, we can add in the right website as you get to that stage as well. As I said, it's been lovely to catch up, and, you know, it'd be great to see you in person at some point soon. So, you know, that might be in London, that might be in Denmark, that might even be in Tanzania, which would be amazing. I would love to
Tanzania. You know, I'm actually just at the end, before we finish, my dream is to open a training hotel there. So you can always come and do some teaching there for me, hey?
Yeah, brilliant. Well, you know, tell us more about that dream then. What does the teaching hotel look like?
Well, obviously it's going to be a working hotel, and, you know, with the real guests. But, you know, the idea is to really develop, you know, people who cannot afford to take an education themselves. They'll come in, they'll work for free, of course, but they will also have accommodation, they'll have food, and they will get basically, you know, educated along the way. And the training hotel is supposed to be a feeder into some of the more established lodges and resorts, where they can be certain that they're going to get quality staff. Because if they're taking straight from college, they have to start retraining anyway. So that's the idea, to try and give people who can't afford their own education into hospitality, and to be sort of a something to aspire to for other education areas, I guess, in Tanzania, saying, okay, well, we need to focus on quality rather than quantity.
I love the thought of that. I love the premise behind it as well. You know, being that bridge between that formal education, the contextual experience, and then being able to step into some really valuable careers. So I think, you know, that's an amazing idea. I'd love to come and be a test guest, and I'll happily help out in whatever way I can with, you know, helping you in what you're trying to achieve there as well. So that sounds amazing, and hopefully on your 3-year plan, that's going to be not too many years away as well.
Yeah, I hope so. I hope so. I'm trying to find a Tanzanian partner at the moment, so that's what I'm working on, because it is tough to do as a foreigner. So yeah, that's what I'm looking at the moment. So it could still take a couple of years, but yeah, you'll be on the guest list.
Brilliant. Look forward to it. Thank you, Betina. And look forward to speaking to you soon.
Yeah, you too. Take care, James.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Learning Reinvented podcast. We hope you enjoyed it. If you've not already done so, please follow our podcast. And if the learning effect can help you and your organisation, please do get in touch. You can find both James and Katie on LinkedIn, and our contact details are in the show notes below.